Enough with treating the Patriots rebuild like something the rest of the league can just brush off. New England put A.J. Brown at the top of the offense, brought in Romeo Doubs to attack the opposite side, and now every piece around Drake Maye has to be judged honestly. Does it help you win, or is it just taking up space? Today we're digging into an underrated receiver, a bold trade possibility, a hidden weapon catching Mike Vrabel's attention, and a real concern on the edge. Hit that like button and subscribe because in Foxborough, a soft roster cannot be acceptable anymore. Look at the difference between truly building a roster and just piling up names for headlines. Everybody is going to look at A.J. Brown first, and they should. A real #1 receiver, a guy used to 1,000-yard seasons, changes how a defense prepares for the Patriots. But the move that might actually bother people in the AFC is not only sitting on the top shelf, it is on the other side, where New England had been losing efficiency, depth, and respect, that #2 receiver spot. Romeo Doubs arrives as a free agent, and he should not be treated like some little footnote. Christopher Knox from Bleacher Report ranked Doubs as the third most underrated receiver in the NFL, and I'll say it clearly, that read makes a whole lot of sense for the Patriots. He does not have to walk in acting like a savior. He has to be exactly what this offense could no longer pretend it had. A reliable, big, technical target who can find space in the secondary and punish coverage that is too locked in on Brown. The numbers matter here. In 2025, Doubs had 55 catches, 724 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That production would have ranked second on the Patriots in catches and receiving yards last season, and it would have tied Kayshon Boutte for second in touchdowns behind Hunter Henry. When Doubs was targeted, he gave the quarterback a 110.1 passer rating. Across 4 seasons in Green Bay, that rating never dipped below 97.0. That is not just statistical decoration. That is consistency, fit, and the ability to function without asking the whole offense to revolve around him. And that is where the pressure starts. The Patriots moved on from Stefon Diggs after a season with 85 catches and 1,013 yards. The #1 production was replaced by Brown's impact, but the mistake would be stopping there, celebrating it, and acting like Drake Maye suddenly had everything fixed. He did not. The second receiver spot had to level up because a young quarterback does not survive off 1 star alone. He needs clean progressions, intermediate windows, and a target who wins his route on time. Doubs gives them that kind of answer. And when one answer walks in, somebody else loses space. Kayshon Boutte had 33 catches for 551 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 27 first downs in 2025. He had useful moments, absolutely. Pop Douglas can have value too. But Patriots football cannot keep falling in love with average pieces when there is a chance to turn extra depth into real reinforcement. If Boutte, Douglas, or another veteran can bring back compensation and help New England attack tight end, edge, or guard, the front office has to listen. No romance. That is the aggressive side of a rebuild. Improve one position and use the ripple effect to fix others. Doubs is not coming in just to catch passes. He pressures the entire room, raises the standard, gives Maye real support, and could open the door for moves in spots where this roster is still thin. Serious teams operate that way. They identify value, choose priorities, and make the whole roster more dangerous. If New England wants to be treated like a threat again, this kind of decision has to become the standard. That makes the second story something you handle with a sharp edge, not with wide eyes just because the name sounds good. Bleacher Report floated a 3-team trade idea involving the Patriots, Browns, and Cardinals, with Kayshon Boutte leaving New England and Michael Wilson coming into form, at least on paper, a heavy trio with A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs. On paper, that sounds explosive. In real life, that is the kind of proposal that requires a cold head, because the Patriots already paid a serious price to change the level of this offense. The framework would look like this. New England gets Wilson. Arizona gets Shedeur Sanders, Boutte, and a 2027 4th-round pick from the Browns. Cleveland gets Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots' 2027 3rd-round pick. It is bold. It is rare for the NFL, and that is exactly why it grabs attention. But grabbing attention is not the same as making sense for Foxborough. Michael Wilson is coming off a strong season, with more than 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, even with unstable quarterback play in Arizona. When Marvin Harrison Jr. was out, Wilson took advantage and showed he could produce with more volume. So yes, the talent is real. If you ask me whether he would help Drake Maye, the answer is obvious. He would. A trio with Brown, Doubs, and Wilson would have size, strength, contested catchability, and the kind of potential that forces immediate respect from the AFC. But this is where the fan host has to become the front office inspector. The Patriots already gave up a 1st-round pick for Brown. They already invested in Doubs. They already have Kyle Williams as a young player the franchise seems to want to develop into more than a small role. So what is the real cost of adding another receiver? It is not only the 2027 third-round pick, it is targets, hierarchy, internal development, and flexibility to attack more urgent holes. I understand the argument for moving Butte. He is in a contract year, he wants to stay in New England, but the target volume should drop with Brown and Doubs ahead of him. The problem is that using Butte as a piece to chase another receiver might solve a luxury while leaving louder problems still screaming on the roster. Tight end needs help. Edge needs help. Guard has to be watched seriously. And if the Patriots have limited capital after a massive trade, every pick has to land in the right spot. So my read is tough. Wilson is tempting, but New England cannot confuse aggression with anxiety. Being aggressive means improving the team where winning actually gets decided. If a cheap opportunity shows up, have the conversation. If the price includes valuable draft capital and an already crowded receiver room, I want the Patriots to be smarter than seduced. The offense has to grow, yes, but the entire rebuild cannot become a wide receiver collection while the other trenches are still begging for help. And if the receiver room already feels crowded, this is the part that should make Patriots fans even more restless. Maybe one of the answers was already inside the building, waiting for someone to stop wasting talent. Efton Chism III did not arrive with national hype all over his name, but when Mike Vrabel points out a practice rep, especially a red zone route, Patriots fans have to lift their heads. Chism came in as an undrafted free agent in 2025, got a 3-year deal worth $2.99 million, and did something a lot of drafted players never managed to do. He made the roster. More than that, he was the Patriots' best player in the 2025 preseason. Then, when the game started counting, the offense basically buried the kid. 3 targets all season, 3 catches, all for first downs, one of them for a touchdown. Sorry, but that does not scream lack of talent. That screams lack of usage. That is why Vrabel's reaction matters. According to Danny Jalett from Patriots Wire, Chism made a strong move on a red zone route, scored the touchdown, and Vrabel was heard praising him with what sounded like a comparison to a former Patriots receiver. The name hanging in the air is Julian Edelman. And no, nobody needs to turn Chism into a legend before September. But we are also not going to act like that kind of comparison in Foxborough is casual. Edelman represents toughness, route intelligence, courage over the middle, and production in big moments. If Chism has flashes of that kind of player, the offense has to investigate it seriously. His college production did not come from nowhere either. At Eastern Washington in 2024, Chism caught 120 passes for 1,311 yards and 12 touchdowns, earning first-team All-Big Sky honors for the second straight year. That is the profile of a player used to volume, reading space, and carrying responsibility. The problem is that in 2025, he barely got used, and when he did, he was mostly pushed outside instead of in the slot, where his talent seems to have the cleanest path. So the demand is direct. Josh McDaniels and this offense cannot repeat the mistake of hiding a player who can create short separation, give Drake Maye a quick answer, and attack defenses from the inside. With Brown and Doubs pulling attention outside the numbers, a live slot receiver can become poison. He does not need to promise 100 catches. He needs packages, routes, snaps, and a real chance. Foxborough, read the comments. Would you put Chism in the offensive rotation right at the start of the season? Or would you make him prove everything again in camp? Because to me, if the guy shows that kind of signal and Vrabel notices it, ignoring it would be stubborn. New England spent too much time failing to maximize offensive weapons. Now that the roster is leveling up, waste has become a competitive sin. After all that talk about offensive weapons, here comes the defensive hit. Jesus cannot turn into a drawn-out mystery. New England took the edge rusher in the second round, pick 55, after getting strong praise for the selection in the 2026 draft. There is no soft read here. The Patriots traded up because they needed to leave that range with real help on the edge. When you do that, the player becomes part of the plan, not a camp curiosity. But the last few weeks brought more questions than answers. Jacas missed voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamp. The absence could be tied to recovery from a knee procedure, his contract, or another factor. But the full picture is what bothers me. As of Tuesday, he was still the only second-round rookie in the league without a signed contract. Chad Graff of The Athletic went right at it, calling the situation unusual and potentially concerning. I am not fighting that read. The Patriots need Jacas. Edge might be the weakest position on the roster, and a Mike Vrabel defense cannot walk into a serious season depending on improvised pressure. Without a consistent threat off the edge, the opposing quarterback breathes, the secondary has to cover too long, and the entire defense loses aggression. The talent explains the urgency. Jacas finished his college career tied for 6th all-time in Big Ten history with 27 sacks, including 11 in 2025. That is not accidental production. That is a real history of impact. That is exactly the kind of profile that can change a third down, collapse the pocket, and let a strong secondary play even freer. But potential sitting still does not hit quarterbacks. Graf also pointed out how strange it is that New England used pick 55 on a player involved in a meaningful contract dispute, absent from spring workouts, out of every full-team practice, and coming off a procedure that still has not been clearly explained. That has to get resolved before it turns into a bigger distraction. I defend the Patriots against cheap exaggeration, but defending the franchise also means demanding a standard. If the risk was controlled, great. Get the contract signed, get him on track, and let Vrabel work. If there is noise between health, contract, and communication, somebody in Foxborough needs to clear the table now. The AFC is not going to wait for the Patriots to organize the background drama. Jacas can be a serious piece for this front seven, but only if he is present, healthy, and fully integrated. The picture today is simple. New England is more talented, but talent alone does not clean up clutter or finish a roster. Doubs raises the offense. The Wilson proposal tests the line between boldness and excess. Chism demands opportunity. Jacas demands an immediate solution. That is the point. The Patriots cannot keep acting like a team in waiting. Drake Maye needs weapons used the right way. Vrabel needs pressure off the edge, and the front office needs to turn depth into advantage. So I want to know, what should be the Patriots' next move? Drop it in the comments, subscribe to Patriots Club fans, and stay right here because Foxborough is entering decision time.